I wanted to ask you about another thing people have talked about sort of as a breaking point for value, and that's this whole
Sure.
COVID-19 thing. And,
Yeah.
all of us as value investors, we're using the price relative typically to some sort of past fundamental, whether that be cash
Yeah.
flows or earnings, or I know you like to use EBIT,
Yeah.
but some people have argued, when you get a situation like this, you almost reach a breaking point where
Yeah.
whatever those past earnings are, they don't really matter once you go past that line because companies are so affected by this. And so I'm
Yeah.
wondering how you look at value investing in a world where we're maybe using this past data to predict the future, but we've had this breaking point that maybe makes it harder to do that.
Sure. So one, that's usually the argument all the time throughout history. Like, well, why'd you own all these energy stocks, or why'd you own this or that? Like in any period, it's usually because something blows out in a sector, an industry, and like everything's totally horrific, and like these businesses are all bust, blah, blah, blah. But so I can only speak to what like our process is trying to achieve. And what we're trying to do is get the cheapest, highest quality value stocks at a given moment. And to the extent that you're a firm that loses your earnings power, which we measure through operating income, through like legitimate things, because like COVID, screws you up or whatever. Well, when we're value investing, we want to get earnings power. If you lose your earnings power, you're not a value investment anymore. So that's check number one. And the value systems themselves will accommodate that. Like because we're always looking at cross-sectional in a relative sense, right? So if I'm looking for the cheapest EBIT guys or girls or firms, guys broadly, I want to look for earnings power. And if Southwest don't have it anymore, well, then we probably don't want to buy them. And then the other component is quality. Like we want to assess like, okay, you have earnings power, but when we assess like your operational momentum and different metrics that highlight that this is like, a dumpster fire, in the waiting, well, we also don't want to own you. And that's fine. Like in this good example would be like energy. Like energy, I think it was in 2015, same thing. It like oil blew out, got chopped in half. And yeah, value will own energy. But if you have a system that's dynamic to value quality, it's going to say, whoa, those are really cheap, but their quality is falling off a ledge. Cycle out of those and go into something that's relatively, same price, but has better kind of quality. And so I think the same thing will happen here. Like a good example might be like Southwest, right? So yeah, you're probably going to own it. It's cheap. It's got operating income. Yeah, there's a lot of bad expectations, but we will see in like the quality and other things if it's as bad as people thought. And, and that's still a TBD. It certainly seems like it will be. But if it turns out that, well, yeah, they took a hit, but when you look at the quality components, yeah, it's hurting, but it's not terrible. And oh, by the way, relative to the whole other universe of everyone else we're comparing to, they're actually doing pretty good. Well, I'd want to keep owning Southwest. Whereas in contrast, just to give you the comparison, if all of a sudden there's other firms that have even better operating income to valuation and they have relatively better quality, well, I'm going to bomb Southwest and go buy that stock, right? That might be a Gilead or something like that, So it should be the case that your system of trying to identify, the cheapest things you can find at the highest quality, it should be somewhat dynamic and built to withstand all these kind of scenarios. Because in theory, you would have thought about this in the historical sample where, there's been World War IIs. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on.